My name is William. Tonight I will tell you why Helen did not drift from Sparta on a breeze of poetry. She left for something Sparta could never truly give, and the road she chose was lit by desire, fear, and clear calculation. We begin inside the Spartan palace, a house of order and iron. Helen lived as a queen, whose beauty was praised yet policed. Every glance could become a rumor, and every gesture was weighed against duty. In such a place, a heart learns to speak in whispers. Menelaus offered safety and bloodlines, a crown and the steady march of ritual. What he could not offer was the sense that Helen's voice mattered more than her image. Sparta prized obedience more than wonder. For a woman of quick mind and restless spirit, that house was a gilded harness. Then a guest arrived under the sacred law of welcome. He was Paris, a prince who understood charm like a language. The old story says a goddess promised him the most beautiful woman alive. That tale is convenient because it turns a choice into a spell. Yet the truth is even more intriguing. Paris did not only bring flattery. He brought another map for Helen's life. Troy offered a different grammar of power, a crossroads of trade where words and gifts moved like tides. Queens advised and hosted alliances. If she entered that world beside the Trojan prince, beauty would purchase influence rather than confinement. Consider also the danger closing around her in Sparta. Suitors had sworn to defend her marriage, yet oaths rust when pride is stung. If scandal came, she would carry the blame. A single rumor could turn a court into a tribunal. Escape began to look prudent as well as tempting. Was it abduction or consent? Some say she was stolen in the night. Others speak of a quiet plan, a line of messages, and a chosen hour when the sea was kind and the guards were sleepy. Listen closely, and another story emerges, one where Helen chooses the path and lets the poets quarrel after she is gone. Before the ship moved, there was a conversation only two people heard. Paris spoke of a city with high walls and high hopes, of a life where beauty worked beside intelligence, of a house where a queen could host, counsel, and steer. Helen heard herself described not as a prize, but as a partner. That single word loosened the chains around her. There is a moment every life contains, a pause at the threshold. Helen stood in that pause. Behind her waited the known weight of duty. In front of her lay risk, noise, and story. She understood that staying would freeze her into a statue, and statues do not breathe. She knew that sailing would ignite many fates, and hers would be the brightest flame. So why did she leave? Because longing and logic met and shook hands. Because a guest promised a stage, and a city offered a role. Because the fear of being spoken for grew greater than the fear of being pursued. The full story behind this might surprise you, for it was not only desire that sailed from Sparta. Strategy sailed with it. Powerful men then used the tale to weave their own banners. A war needs a spark, and a face makes an easily marketable match. When kings wished for ships to launch, they pointed at Helen, and the wind obeyed. In truth, the tinder lay stacked long before she stepped aboard, and many hands struck the match. Remember this as we move forward. Helen left not only for Paris, but for herself. She left a room where her story was written by others. She chose a horizon where she might edit the script. The choice was dangerous, imperfect, courageous, and human. It is the kind of choice that keeps history alive. Stay with me, because soon we will walk the night of her departure, hear the words that passed between them, and see the price that waited across the water. And we will ask one last question. If Helen had stayed, would peace have followed, or would another spark have found the same old tinder? The answer may change how you see the most famous love in the ancient world. Night settled over Sparta, a deep velvet hush upon the stone-bright courtyards. Helen walked the moon-washed galleries with a winter-weight shawl around her shoulders. She knew the clockwork palace rhythm and the night-watch routes of the guards. Beyond the walls, a sea-ready ship waited with its oars tightly wrapped so they would not chatter. What passed between Helen and Paris in the last private hour was not poetry, but terms. In Troy she would be a voice, not a trophy. She would host envoys, sit in councils, and be weighed by her hard-won counsel as well as her face. Paris agreed. He wanted more than a battle-sung legend at his side. He wanted an equal partner. How did she pass the gates? Not in a chariot and not in the embrace of force. She wore a traveller's cloak and walked like any noble going to a shrine at dawn. At the outer court she turned once and memorized a weather-smoothed notch in a step and the resin-sweet smell of crushed time. She made a keepsake out of details. At the shore the ship lay low in the water, ready for a quiet river run to the sea. The helmsman set his hand to the tiller, and the oars slipped forward without a sound. The city shrank, the palace sank into the hills. Helen felt the pull of fear and the pull of hope at the same time. She did not cut either rope. In that taut, breath-held tension, she felt alive. By morning the ship found open water. The prince asked if she would turn back if given the chance. Helen shook her head. Turning back had never been the true choice. The choice was to remain unwritten, or to write, to accept a carved wood roll or to speak. She chose to write. The choice felt fierce and truly hers. Word reached Sparta before the salt-bright spray had dried on the deck. Menelaus lost more than a wife. He lost an emblem that validated alliances. Friends reminded him of sworn oaths. Rivals offered iron-bitter sympathy. Messengers rode the coast, and great men began to speak in the burnished language of duty. A story became a summons, yet the truth is even more astonishing. The quarrel that followed had been preparing itself for years. Trade routes rubbed against pride. Old grudges wore new uniforms. Helen was the spark, but the woodpile had been stacked by many hands. Leaders saw a chance to claim honor and profit and wrap the choice in romance. In Troy the welcome blazed, then cooled. Soon the music thinned and work began. Helen learned roads and rooms. She turned receptions into quiet negotiations. She weighed each word like a coin, slow and deliberate. Did she love the man who carried her across the water? Yes, though not in the simple way storytellers prefer. She loved the door he opened and the stage it revealed. She loved courage, including her own. She loved the permission to be both ornament and author. As tempers hardened, envoys demanded her return. Helen met them in a hall washed with amber light. She would not be shipped home like cargo. The sea did not erase a mind. The choice was not a theft to undo, but a decision to respect. What did it cost her? She knew that war walks on the heels of wounded pride. She also knew that some lives are paid for twice, once by the one who lives them, and once by the world that needs a simpler tale. She accepted both prices and stood her ground. Now we close the loop. Helen left Sparta for passion, yes, but also for authorship. She wanted the freedom to risk being wrong, rather than the safety of being silent. If she had stayed, another quarrel would have found another spark, and the same ships would have pushed from the beach. History would still have sharpened its knives. Only her story would have been smaller. So the real reason she left is not a riddle. Desire met reason. A path appeared. She took it with open eyes. And if the world turned that step into a legend of theft and rescue, she kept another truth near her heart. Sometimes a person must be her own messenger. Sometimes a queen must be the author of her name.